From Connecticut Public Radio in Hartford, this is Audacious. I'm Kyone Wolf. Gray, hey pup, how should I start off this episode about animal psychics? With giving you a treat. And what about you, Whiskey? Since you're a cat, that means you're awfully clever, so how do you think I should start this one off? With giving you a treat. Okay, I think I'm sensing a theme here, but what about all the other things our pets have to say? You know, when they're not angling for treats. Today, two animal psychics, also known as animal communicators, join us to talk about how they got into this kind of work and what goes on in their sessions with animals and their humans. They'll also help me understand what Gray thinks of me and my cat Whiskey. In a little bit, you'll meet Laura Stinchfield. She's the author of 2 books on animal communication, and she's been developing her skills since she was a little kid. But first, we're kicking things off with animal communicator Nikki Vasconez. She's based in Florida, and she's been doing this work professionally since 2021. And she says she currently has a wait list of over 8,000 people. So how did she first begin communicating with animals in this unique way?
It wasn't until I was 28 years old that I even learned that this was possible. My friend happened to be connecting with a local massage therapist who mentioned that she could talk to animals. And I just went home and Googled animal communication books and bought like the first 6 that came up. And all of those books by different authors, they all said, everybody can learn to do this. So I just started doing practice sessions with friends and family and was getting really great feedback of very specific messages their animals were saying. And that's how it all started. And I was like, wow, okay, maybe this is legit and maybe I can do it. And it took off from there.
So will you describe what's going on, I want to say in your head, but I imagine it's more than just in your head. When you are communicating with an animal, are you hearing your voice, their voice? Are you seeing, are you clairvoyant? What's going on in you when you're communicating with an animal?
The top 2 ways that I receive messages are thoughts in my head and visuals, like images of your living room layout. But also it can be an ache or a pain in my body where your animal has an ache or a pain. Or maybe I smell something or I taste something. For me personally, the 2 least common ways that I receive messages are taste and smell.
How do you get into the zone of this communication?
It is something that you can turn on and off, because if you are hearing messages from animals or people all day long, that would be exhausting. So for me, I'm very strict with, I'm setting the intention to connect with an animal right now, and that's what I'm going to do. Now, there are times where I'll receive unsolicited messages from animals, whether in the wild or a friend's animal. That, of course, happens. But it's not like I'm hearing thoughts from the animals all day long. And to get into the zone, it really is just an awareness of yourself and your body. And are you feeling calm, settled, and grounded? I just sit in a chair, close my eyes, and just breathe for maybe 3 to 5 minutes. It's not like this formal meditation I do ahead of time. It's just setting the intention to connect and then taking a couple minutes to just breathe.
You've communicated with all sorts of animals. Will you list off a few that maybe would surprise people?
Turtles, bearded dragons, geckos, pigs, cows, camels, elephants. I was recently in Thailand.
Is there like an elephant vibe, like a generic elephant personality? Or are the animals as unique as we are? Like there's no general human vibe for the most part. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. Actually, you're the communicator, so I'll let you answer that question.
They are, no, you're exactly on point there, Kyone. The animals are as unique as we are. So if you were to just say, connect with this being Samantha and didn't tell me the breed or the type of animal, I probably wouldn't be able to tell you what kind of animal it was. But they all sound the exact same. There's no distinguishing factors between them. Like people always say, are cats less affectionate than dogs overall in your sessions? Or do they care less to communicate? No, it's the exact same.
Have you ever felt scared by what you heard from an animal?
Never, because they always are just sharing what we need to know and what their guardians need to know to improve their life. There have been times though, Kyone, where an animal will say, like they're nearing the end of their physical life. But it's not scary because it's okay, what can we do to help support you now? Like, what do we need to know?
So, when an animal dies, can you talk about what you see and feel happening with them?
When people book with me, I'm doing the session on my own time through a photograph. So someone might book 4 to 6 weeks prior to me actually doing the session. And my clients don't know the exact day I'm doing the session. It's whenever I'm able to do it with my schedule. I give them a window. So this person scheduled a session for their dog like 2 months prior. The morning I went to connect with this dog, I later found out that the beginning half of my session, the dog was in the physical body, alive. The last half, she had transitioned. And what's amazing, and I'll never forget it, is that I just got goosebumps talking about it. What's amazing is that in the middle of that session, all of a sudden, this massively bright light was in my mind's eye. And it was so bright, it made me jump back in my chair. And I said out loud in the recording, I was like, oh my gosh. I'm like, I don't know what, I just saw this crazy like stadium light. I'm like, I don't know if you're like looking in your animal's face for something or what's going on, but it was enough to startle me. And when something like that happens, I always state the exact time because maybe that means something to them. So I don't remember the time of what it was. It was probably 7 a.m. something. I do my sessions early. They later told me that literally at that moment is when the animal passed away. But there was no fear, right? There was no pain. There was no suffering. There was no fear. And I continued chatting. It was an hour plus conversation. The last half, the animal was in spirit. So a big misconception, and I don't understand why a lot of animal communicators say this, is that you have to wait a certain period of time before you can connect with an animal after they pass. No way. You absolutely do not. Maybe you need to wait some time for the humans to process and grieve. Totally, 100%. But in terms of can you actually talk to the animal right after they pass? Yeah, I mean, it happened during while they transitioned. I was connecting with the dog. It was amazing.
So, it makes me think about how I had a cat named Momo for 13 years. He was my boy. And when I think about Momo, I think of somebody who knew me for 13 years in my 20s and early 30s, which are particularly juicy times of life. So when I think of him and I love him, is he with me? Is he not doing anything else up there or wherever he is? What do you think?
It's so funny. Like I certainly don't have the answers as to like what's it like there because I've never been there, right? But what I can share from connecting with the animals is that in spirit, after they transition, heaven, whatever you want to call it, there's no separation of time or space. So they can be with us, actively engaged in what we're doing, in spirit, whatever they're doing, but also with mom, dad, brother, sister, best friend, like on earth, the physical realm. They can be with all of us at the same time. They're not limited to like, okay, I'm with mom right now, then I'm going to go visit dad. And what's really great is that in every session that I do with an animal in spirit, I always ask them, how are you in your mom or dad's life right now? And they'll always talk about something going on like right now with you to allow you to know like, wow, that happened after they passed. They really are here. And then I also ask, what signs or messages are you sending your family? So not only can they send us maybe butterflies or we keep seeing the same color flower, but like we feel a physical sensation sometimes. So yes, your cat is with you, our animals are with us. And the way that they are with us is so infinite. There are so many possibilities. Like it's what's that phrase that I don't know. It's like limitless.
During a session, when I think about like people who do Reiki, they say that the Reiki benefits them too. And I wonder is that similar for you? How is this for you? Obviously, it has to be good because this is your life, but what is this like for you when you're doing it?
I get such joy and just fulfillment. It makes me be a better person. The more sessions that I do, the better I sleep. The earlier I go to bed, the more I meditate, the better I eat because I like just feel better. And so it just makes life a lot better. But in terms of like energy, I cannot do this all day long. I couldn't do sessions all day long. Like 2 max is more where I tap out at because any more than 2 sessions, I'm tired and my heart's not fully in it. And if I'm not fully in it, I'm not going to do it. So right now, because I don't need to do 2 a day, I typically just do 1. And that's the sweet spot. It's like an hour and a half. And then that's it. And it's a lot of fun.
Inevitably, because of the world we're in, you get criticism. You get people totally suspicious of your claims. Yeah, right. All of the things you've probably heard before. How do you hold that? What do you say to them, if anything?
It was hard in the beginning. It really derailed me. It was awful. Within 1 week of TikTok, because I went viral pretty fast on TikTok, I got called a schizophrenic in like 10 different languages. I got called a fraud, a thief, all this awful stuff. And it definitely took time and like self-reflection of like, okay, are you doing this? Are you confident? Do you believe in yourself? Let's do it.
When you have these sessions and you're communicating with these pets, do they ever reveal something about their pet parent that's kind of personal and
Oh, yeah.
you're not quite sure what to do? What can you tell me a story about that?
It was early on in my journey. It was a paid session, so I was charging. And I asked this dog in spirit, and I have permission to share this. I've posted online. The mom's okay with it. I asked this dog dog in spirit, if he had any advice for his mom. And he said, tell mom that she needs to have more fun during sexy time. And I was like, oh my gosh. And I later found out that the mom recently had surgery and she was unable to be intimate with her partner for like a long time. But they had just started talking that like she was in a position where she could now. So the dog saying this was like the most heartfelt message because all of this transpired after he had passed. So it's like we sometimes get shy, like, oh my gosh, I can't share that message. It's too personal. But it was the most beautiful thing they could have heard. But there's no boundaries and there's no filter. And our animals are here to help us. Whatever they share is for your benefit and will benefit you in some way. Like whatever they reveal is in your highest good and meant for you to hear.
It makes me think about their purpose in our lives. Surely, when I think about like a bird in the Amazon, that bird isn't here to help me. That bird is, I don't know what the bird is here for, but it's not to help me out. So when you do talk to animals who are not pets, do they care about us?
In my opinion, every being on this planet is here to help us in some way. And sure, does this bird care about you personally at the physical level of, I mean, maybe not, but at the soul level, at the greater plan of what's happening in this world? Yes, because there are lessons to be learned in everything. Like a quick example, we have a bird out front that has a nest right in front of our front door. And at first it was really cute. And I was like, oh my gosh, there's baby nests. Until I started getting dive bombed in the face by the mom, or the mom or dad. And then they're like dive bombing my little dogs. And then I'm getting pissed. And I'm like, listen, I see your babies. I respect you. I used to want to be your friend. Now I'm just mad at you. Get out of my face, you know? But I was sitting with myself the other day and I was like, why is this so frustrating for me? But then I was like, okay, what is the lesson to be learned here? And it was obviously, but like this bird is protecting its babies, right? And then my husband and I are talking about having a baby soon. Like I want to get pregnant towards the end of the year. And it brought me back to like, what would I do to protect my child? Whatever I have to do. And once I had that realization of instead of being annoyed at this bird, realizing he's just protecting his baby, he stopped dive bombing my face. Right. So it's like these little lessons. And, you know, did that bird put a nest there to help me come to some, I don't know, inner healing in some way? No, I don't know. I mean, maybe, but like, I really do believe that we have something to learn in every situation. And maybe you're walking through the jungle or the forest and you hear all these little birdies or squirrels playing, and you witnessing that makes you stop and pause and smile. And maybe in your life, you needed that moment of disconnection to see happiness and just fun, right? So it's like, I just believe that we're eyes wide open to whatever we see and it's all helping us in some way.
Are there common concerns among animals? Because part of me is like, yeah, well, they're probably concerned about us because we're because we're so ridiculous. Are there common concerns, and if so, what are they?
In terms of domestic, like cats and dogs, because of the most common domesticated animals, a lot of them, not all of them, they want the more sunlight in the house. A lot talk about that. A lot talk about wanting, like dogs specifically, wanting to go on walks when their people are not on the phone. Like they want their person to be present with them and to get on their level and to connect with them. And when I say get on their level, I mean physically, like get your butt on the ground, like get on their level and connect with them without your phone in your hand.
You told me that you are hoping to get pregnant at the end of this year. And so then I think about you having a child and teaching them. And you do teach this. This is yet another service you offer. So when you think about teaching your child how to do this, my first instinct is, man, they're probably going to teach you.
I was just going to say, they're going to be better than I could ever even imagine that I am. Because imagine growing up knowing that this is possible and normal and okay from day one. Like, what? Holy smokes.
What I've got in the back of my head as we've been talking is the listener who's rolling their eyes so hard at all of this. And they get it. Yeah. You love your pet. Yeah. You sort of communicate. Yeah. But like this sort of level of communication, I'm not buying it. This lady's telling stories. What is something someone can do, especially if they have limited expectations of themselves, which I imagine is a barrier? What can they do to maybe like give this a really good shot in their lives?
Just take some time every day. And it can be 2 minutes. Just sit with your animal, eyes closed if you want, and just connect in with them. Try to get a sense of how they're feeling. Like, what do you feel when you connect with them? And the first couple of times you do it, you might get nothing. But eventually, things are going to come to you, and you're not going to be able to explain it with your logical mind. You're going to see a difference in your animal's behavior. Maybe all of a sudden they're more affectionate to you because you're actually taking the time to sit there on the ground for 2 minutes. You think nothing's happening, but then you notice your cat starts snuggling when they never have snuggled with you ever. Like little things like that will happen. Even if you don't want to do it professionally and you don't want to make it a side gig or a full-time gig, you're just going to improve your life. Like you're going to see things differently. You're going to experience joy in ways that you never previously did because you're more open and aware to like what's happening around you. It's just a magical journey. It's amazing.
You're listening to my conversation with Nikki Vasconez. She's an animal communicator based in Florida, and she also teaches people how to do it. When we get back, Nikki interprets Gray's thoughts on his regal cat sibling, Whiskey.
Gray is like, this cat just thinks that he is untouchable. He's just like up on my throne, and I'm just going to do what I'm going to do, and everyone's going to do everything for me.
Then animal communicator Laura Stinchfield shares her thoughts about how our pets continue to communicate with us even after they die.
When our animals pass, they're not gone. They're just not in body anymore.
I'm Kyone Wolf. This is Audacious. Stay with me.
If you could read my mind, love, what a tale my thoughts could tell. Just like an old-time movie about a ghost from a wishing well, in a castle dark or a fortress strong with chains upon my feet.
This is Audacious. I'm Kyone Wolf. Hold on a second. Yes, Gray? You're enjoying this show about animal psychics. Animal communicators, yes, that is another way to put it. What about you, Whiskey? What do you think? You find it amusing that humans think they could grasp the complexities of your world, yet you admit that our efforts occasionally reveal a glimpse of the deeper, ineffable bond between us, one that transcends language despite its inherent limits. Also, you would like a treat. Let's get back to my conversation with Nikki Vasconez. She used to be a litigation attorney in Pennsylvania, but once she developed her skills as an animal communicator, she left the law behind. Now almost 500,000 people on social media follow her stories and advice for connecting more deeply with pets. Here's a clip.
Before you give your pets medicine, clip their nails, pick off their eye boogers, or whatever you're doing to their body, rather than just going up to them and just doing it, I want you to let them know what you're about to do and why. How would you feel if I just came up to you and pick something out of your hair? You would feel a little bit violated. The same applies with our pets. Let them know what you're doing before you do it, and you're gonna find them be a lot more calm and amenable to what you're doing.
Okay, moment of truth. Nikki's about to help me connect with Gray, my 5-year-old Eastern European village dog. What in the world does Gray want me to know?
He says that he would like a more special place for him to eat, not just in the middle of the kitchen.
That is where he eats, in the middle of the kitchen.
Yeah, he doesn't like it. His bowl is kind of sliding around when he's eating. Okay, so where do you want to eat? He wants to eat I'm seeing living room on top of a carpet. Do you have that right near the kitchen?
I do. In fact, that's his spot where he waits for me to allow him to eat.
That's where he wants to eat. He says that he likes to eat in that spot on the carpet because it's far away from the cat and they won't get into his space. And I'm seeing where the cat lays is like, I'm seeing in the same room, but like the opposite side of the room. Is that accurate?
That's accurate.
So that's why he likes that spot. So tell me about your personality, Gray. And let me just tell you this, Kion. When I was connecting, I got a sense that he was maybe anxious, and don't say anything. But I don't know if that's true. It's just when I sat down and I wasn't like actually connecting, but it was like a thought that came through. So sometimes that's accurate, those pre-session nudges, and sometimes not. So I just want to connect in to see if that's in fact something with him. He says, I'm going to alert mom when someone's here, when I hear something, but then I'm going to retreat back and mom's going to be the one to take care of it. Like she can be the strong one to handle the situation. Does that make sense? Without giving me details, does that make sense about how Gray is personality wise?
Yes.
Okay, so let's continue now that makes sense. Anything else about your personality, Gray? Yeah, and like what I'm seeing here is like, imagine if you were all of a sudden were to have like this massive party at your house. Everyone showed up, tables were being set up, booths, and he wasn't aware of it. He'd be like, what is happening? Like, would he kind of freak out in that situation?
Yes.
And it's not that he wouldn't enjoy that, maybe, but he needs to know about it ahead of time and he needs to be informed so that he can be like, okay, this is happening and this is why it's happening. Okay, so now that I explored that, because that was just lingering there, what were you going to say about a specific question for him?
He was born in Russia. He's from Moscow. And during the pandemic, he and many other street dogs were flown over. I got him when he was about 13 months old. And the thing is that when men are around, he's incredibly protective. And he's gotten more so. And I've used a trainer to help, but it's hard because I think because during the pandemic, he wasn't exposed to a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
So what I really want is for him to read me. So if these men are coming over and they're friends and I'm happy to see them, I want him to relax.
Mm-hmm.
As opposed to now he's kind of a little bit scary and sometimes gets a little mouthy and he stalks the men.
Mm.
Like if they get up to walk around, all of a sudden he's like, what are you doing? Where are you going? And it makes me fearful, and I'm sure that feeds back to him. And so I just wish he would read me. If I'm scared, go ahead, do your thing, bro.
Yeah. Let's find out. Well, this is a good educational point for anyone that may be listening. I'm glad that you asked this because one of my favorite ways to phrase a question, especially when something is going on behavioral wise, is rather than just saying, hey, Gray, why are you doing this? Because just like with us, that puts us on the defensive, like we're doing something wrong. I like to ask, which I'm going to do in a moment, show me how you feel right when you see a man. Because then it's like, okay, help me understand why you felt that way as opposed to why did you do that? So what I want you to do, Gray, is I want you to allow me to see how you feel when a man walks into your front door. So he's saying that before he came to be with you, he said that he witnessed a man backhanding, smacking a woman. And he doesn't ever want to experience that again. Okay, do you understand, Gray, that the men that mom have come over are friends? They're not going to touch her in that way. He says, yeah, but you can't always trust them. So, Gray, we really need the harmony in the home when the men come over. So if mom is not afraid, that means you don't have to be afraid. So let's talk about that. How do you feel about that? He's really concerned, Kion, for your safety. He feels like when they get up, they're gonna go get an object to then hit you or hurt you. So what I want you to work on with him is reminding him over and over again that the men that come into your home are your friends. And I'm sure you've been doing that, but saying like, you don't want to say, they're not going to hurt me. They're not going to hit me. Because when you say...
Because then he hears hit and hurt.
Right. And then he sees that image of that happening. You're already a pro. You want to say, they're my friend. They're welcome. They're here to bring joy to our world. We're going to have a fun party. Like replaying that image over and over again in your mind, just having this dialogue with you and with him instantly changes it. So I'd be curious to see if it makes a difference just having this conversation, implementing some of those little things that we talked about. Can I ask what he thinks of Whiskey?
Sure.
Okay. So Gray, let's talk about your brother Whiskey. What do you think about Whiskey? He says that Whiskey thinks that he is above all the most important. Like Whiskey would be like, you're a peasant, you are no one to Gray, right? And Gray is like, this cat just thinks that he is untouchable. He's just like up on my throne and I'm just going to do what I'm going to do and everyone's going to do everything for me. Does that sound like a good dynamic there?
I call Whiskey my king. He is my king. When I put pictures of him, I give him a little king emoji on his head. He is my king. So yes, that checks out.
I love that you call him your king. That's so perfect.
And and it's funny you call him your brother Whiskey. All the time I refer to them as brothers.
Aw.
After all this, you're making me wonder, what do you think the world would be like if everybody had your skill of communicating with animals? All 8 billion of us. How do you think the world would be different?
This planet would be the most compassionate, healing, loving place on earth, and it would thrive. If all of us appreciated and respected other beings, we would all respect ourselves, and there'd be no suffering. Like, it would just be love. Period.
Nikki Vascones, thank you so much for talking with me. And Gray, and Whiskey.
Thank you for having me on.
If I could walk with the animals, talk with the animals, grunt and squeak and squawk with the animals, and they could talk to me.
Now, unlike Nikki, who discovered her talent for communicating with animals just a few years ago, Laura Stinchfield of North Salem, New York, knew she was capable of it right from the beginning.
When I was little, I grew up on a horse farm. So I was around lots of different animals and trainers and vets. And I just assumed everyone spoke to animals because I could just tell just by looking at them. Like I knew if my dog had a stomach ache or why my horse wasn't jumping, if she had a sore hip. So it was really actually quite tough for me because it was also a time where there was a lot of cruelty to animals and I couldn't understand why a horse who had a sore hip was getting beat for refusing a jump when they were just in pain. And it wasn't actually until I was in my early 20s and I was studying the Tellington Touch, which is like a massage for animals and also a humane way to train animals. And the teachers there were saying to me, like, what are you doing? Like the animals are coming along quicker with you, or like the animals are acting differently with you. And I was actually a really shy kid. So for them to say that was huge for me in my development actually with animals, because it almost gave me permission to be like, to keep exploring it and to keep looking into it and finding out like, what am I doing and what is this connection with animals all about?
When you are connecting with animals, how is it being interpreted in your mind? Are you hearing actual voices? Are you seeing maybe visually some sort of location flare up? What is it like for you to get those messages?
My mind just transfers all the input into words very quickly. So I actually hear it in my voice, in my head, almost like I'm whispering to myself. And sometimes when I'm talking to animals, well, most of the time when I'm talking to animals, you'll hear me sort of like doing this whisper. And what I'm doing is I'm saying what the animal is saying in real time. What's happening is that my mind is transferring like little flashes of images in my mind that they're sending, feelings in the body, just like feelings of anxiety or actual pain in the body, and just transferring it really fast into words. Now, everyone gets it differently. So like, that's how I get it. But someone could be equally as good as me and get it all in pictures or just all in a sense of knowing. So everyone really needs to kind of learn, like, how do you process information? Like, how do you process the energy or the thoughts and feelings of the people and the animals around you? And then once you start to realize that, you'll be able to concentrate it more. It's almost like a radio dial. You'll be able to kind of go to that station on the radio dial and be able to actually hear what an animal is saying, or whatever you're doing, really. I mean, it could be, if you're working with people in a healing way, or if you're just having a conversation with a person, I think that's the same as well.
When you talk about being open to this signal, are you open to it at all times, or is it only when you're really focusing on an animal?
For me, when I was little, I would see something, like I can pick things up visually as well with the animals. Like I can see the slightest like ear twitch or blink of an eye or a look away or like a stretch, like things other people don't see, I see, but other animal people will see them. And then I'll focus more, and then it kind of opens up the door to hear more. And then also, of course, you ask questions like, if I see something, are you scared? Are you nervous? What are you nervous about?
It sounds like you're saying that anybody could learn this or get better at this. How does one get better at this?
Well, I think the most important thing is to be conscious of your own thoughts and feelings. So if you're conscious of what you're thinking at any given moment, or what you're feeling in your body at any given moment, or even how you process information, like do you have visuals that go through your mind? If you're conscious of that, you're going to be more aware if something else pops in, because then you're going to be like, okay, that wasn't me. So that was someone else's. So let's say I'm working all day and I'm talking to animals, I'll type it out on my computer. And sometimes what will happen is all of a sudden I'll have a pain in my shoulder, or I'll have a pain in my wrist. Well, I didn't have it 2 seconds ago, but like now I have it. Now, is it having it because I'm cramping, because I'm writing, or I'm hovering over my computer? So that's something I need to ask myself. Is that my pain? If that's not my pain, then I have to go to the animal and be like, is this your pain you're sending me? And I think people get this all the time. Like when I was a little kid in school, I would have really bad stomach aches in class. And then I would leave. And by the time I got to the nurse's office, my stomach ache was gone. It wasn't until my 30s that I heard that the kid sitting next to me had ulcers. So we're picking up people's energy all the time. And it's important to focus. And meditation is really good at helping this.
What are the limits to the animal connections you can have, depending on where they are and if they're still alive?
No limits. You can talk to them wherever they are, and if they're still alive or if they're passed away. So possibilities are endless.
So, like, you could talk to Spuds McKenzie.
Yeah, totally.
Or that poor Russian street dog, Laika, who was the first animal to orbit the Earth. Or the horse who played Mr. Ed. You could talk with them if you wanted to.
100%. Yeah, 100%.
So you can communicate with humans, dogs, all sorts of animals. Is there a cutoff point? Like, do insects communicate as well?
I haven't done a lot of communicating with insects.
It feels like it would be overwhelming, but yeah, go ahead. It's just a lot of them.
But I do believe that there's two things that you could talk to when you're talking to something like an insect. You could be talking to that individual consciousness of that individual insect, or you could be talking to like a collective consciousness of that type of insect.
There are some animals we meet in our lifetimes as pets, and we feel really connected with them. Almost like, dare I use the word soulmate. And there's some animals, I had a cat named Easter who I did not connect with. Thankfully, someone else took her on, but she just wasn't part of what felt like my family. And so I'd love to hear what you think about, like, are there animals who are connected to us on a bigger level?
100%, like 100%. Like I've had an animal that's come back to me as a dog 3 times now.
How could you tell? How could you tell?
You feel like you're home. You're just stronger with them, and you're just more connected, and things are just easier. Even if they're naughty, things are just easier. But when they come back to you, and there's like reincarnation, there's always signs and synchronicities. Like the day you find them is your birthday or your friend's birthday, or you hear your favorite song when you first see them, or for you, your grandmother, the sign is a butterfly and you see a butterfly on the way to the shelter. Like just like little things like that happen that make you go, huh, like that's kind of weird, or oh, that's kind of neat. But they always happen when you find a reincarnated animal. So yeah, there's just something inside of you that just feels stronger with them. But with Easter coming to you, and then like sometimes animals are meant to come through us. So it's not that they're not meant for us, they're just meant for someone else. And we're meant to give them something to help them move on to their next life, or maybe they wouldn't be prepared if they didn't have that time with us.
I'm sure that you also have a lot of experience with animals at the end of their lives. I think that it's typical that when it's time to put an animal down, the owner is super sad and in some way tormented about it. Like, I know this is the right thing to do. They're old. They can't eat or drink anymore, et cetera, et cetera. But there's like a sliver of the pie chart that's thinking, am I doing the right thing? How do you explain that sliver? Is that just a human thing that we all do because it's in our wiring about questioning ourselves if we're doing the right thing in order to do the right thing? Or are there ever times where that wasn't the right thing to do, putting the animal down?
I really believe the animal will tell you. Like there's always a moment where the animal looks at you, or there's something the animal or a lot of times the animal is like, hey, like you got to help me. Like I don't feel good. Like this is like time. What people need to know about the dying process is it not what it seems. Like we think all our animals are doing is suffering and scared, but that is never the case. Like there is always this like blending of the other side. So they feel like pulled to this like intense feeling of love. And they're seeing like our ancestors, even if they didn't know our ancestors, they're seeing their dog friends. They're smelling things from the other side. So like if they were nauseous in this life, they might be smelling roast beef on the other side and be okay with it, not feeling nauseous. So there's always this like pull to the other side, which helps them let go. So we just are looking at them suffering, but that is not always the case. The only time where I think it's like really where I feel so hard for people is when the animal has dementia, because it's much harder for those animals to be able to look at you and say like I can't do this anymore, because they're so much in their own world and they're so much on the other side already that's a really tough time. I know from my own experience, I'd rather do it too early than too late, because they can suffer, so, but they forgive us on the other side. I mean, they're happy as soon as they are hit heaven, like they're good. It's us that suffer. The way I like to explain it is if you picture that radio dial, right? Where they reside on the other side is this very high frequency of energy on that radio dial. And that's the same frequency as like love and joy and gratitude and feeling oneness with nature, just feeling really connected, like you're fulfilling a goal, or like you're just really in a good place and feeling healthy. That's that energy where they reside. But oftentimes the number one way that an animal will let you know they're around you is by placing a memory in your mind and then wrapping their spirit around you. And a lot of people think that they're conjuring up that memory themselves. But if you're all of a sudden like thrown to tears because of a memory, that's them. That's them touching you.
Out of nowhere, yeah.
The biggest thing is that when our animals pass, they're not gone. They're just not in body anymore. And of course, I want my animals here in body too, right?
They're not here, but now they're everywhere.
Now they're everywhere. Exactly. Now they're everywhere.
That was Laura Stinchfield. She says she's been able to connect with animals since she was a little kid. And now she makes a living as an author and pet communicator. After the break, how does Laura react to skeptics? And in the face of doubt and disbelief, what really drives her to do this?
This work changes people's lives and changes the animals' lives. like animals who are in pain and nobody can figure out what it is, and then I talk to them and they fix it, or if they're misunderstood somehow.
I'm Kyone Wolf. This is Audacious. Stay tuned.
You're in the arms of the angel. May you find some comfort here.
This is Audacious. I'm Kyone Wolf. Laura Stinchfield says she's been communicating with animals since she was a little kid. She's the author of Voices of the Animals and Stormy's Words of Wisdom, an enlightened dog's profound insights on life. She also has a CD called Pet Communication, Loss, and the Afterlife, Meditations for Connecting and Communicating with Your Animal Before and After Their Death. Now, before I got a reading on my dog, Gray, I wanted to know, when people connect with Laura, what are they usually hoping to understand?
Oh, there's all sorts of things. So, some just call because they're just curious. They just want to hear what their animal has to say. Sometimes their animal has pain and they don't know where. They just want to see how their animal feels in their body. Death and dying is a big one. Like when will I know when he's going? How does he feel? Can you tell him to tell me? And then behavioral issues are big too, like aggression, or cats peeing outside the litter box, or cat scratching, like all different types of reasons, mostly behavioral and physical, and death and dying.
So I would say with Gray, he's a good puppy. I tell him many times a day, I love reassuring my animals how good and handsome they are. And so I guess if I were to connect with you, I would say, I would just like to know, is there anything he needs? Is there anything I'm not doing for him? And also he is somewhat protective under certain circumstances. And sometimes I feel like I want him to read me, but at the same time, I also want him to read other people because he's got senses I don't.
Okay, Gray, did you hear, honey? You're on, bud. I told him earlier. I was like, you better tell me what you're thinking.
I've been telling him that we were going to talk too.
Okay, Gray, you're on, buddy. So he said in the morning he wants to go on the walk, but he wants to go more up and to the right, and he wants you to speed up.
Okay.
You know what he's talking about?
I can see that.
Right. What else, buddy? Wait. You want to say something about your mom? Okay, what do you want to say something about your mom? You want your mom to know that she's strong? Like, how is she strong? Is she physically strong, or mentally strong, or emotionally strong? Like, what do you mean she's strong? He said all of that, but I was talking about emotionally strong. He said he doesn't ever want to see you sad, and he's sorry that you got that pain. What else, buddy? You have a secret. He says at nighttime, he dreams about sneaking out the house and roaming the neighborhood.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah. And so, something serious? Okay. He said not to be upset about something that failed or didn't work out like he wanted it to. And that he sees something happening in the future with an older woman. And that's going to be the right timing. And he says, and more of a partnership. Do you know what that is?
Oh, like a future partnership for me?
Yeah.
No, but I am typically drawn to older women.
She looks like she has big hair. Do you know who that is?
I don't, but I'll keep that in mind.
She's thinking about mom. Yeah. You can feel her thinking about mom. Okay, cool. It looks like she's educated. She's been there, done that, and she really loves you. The support is big.
Huh. Thank you. Now, you inevitably hear people say, this is
Yeah.
What does that feel like, and how do you respond?
It's understandable because I talk to animals. And if I I'm on the phone with someone who I feel like is close and is going to be combative with me the whole time, like I just refund them. It's not worth my time. Like I just say, I'm not the person for you. Super rare, like maybe twice a year, but I'll do it because that's not the best use of my time. But I love it when I change people because that, that happens all the time too.
If you woke up one morning and this ability was gone, what do you think you'd miss the most?
The feeling of awe. This work changes people's lives and changes the animals' lives. Like animals who are in pain and nobody can figure out what it is. And then I talk to them and they figure out what it is and they fix it. Like, I think about those animals, like, what if they never got to say anything? Like, would they be living with that? Or if they're misunderstood, somehow. So I would be devastated if I just like all of a sudden couldn't hear them. But then I also know myself, like I'd figure it out. I'd do something else, like equally as awesome. I'd reinvent myself.
If you could swap places with any animal for a day, what kind of animal would it be? And what would you hope to understand from their perspective to truly embody this animal? What would it be?
A whale. I want to find out what's going on in that ocean. Like how are they? 100% a whale.
Do you think we reincarnate into animals or from animals that are not human?
Yeah, they can totally come back as people. So I had this client who had this cat, and the cat was like, I'm coming back. I'm coming back. I'm going to be their baby. So when I die, I'm going to come back and I'm going to be their baby. And so they said to the kitty, like they asked the kitty, like, how will we know it's you, right? And he's like, I'm going to just do the kneading. You're going to know me because I'm kneading. So then years go by and they call me up and they have this toddler and they're like, Laura, you're not going to believe this. When he's in the high chair, he kneads and all the family members go, where do you think you're a cat kneading on? It's so cool.
Well, Laura Stinchfield, thank you so much for meeting Gray and Whiskey. And thank you so much for talking with me.
Oh, I feel so honored you had me on. So thank you. Thank you so much.
All right, now it's been a few months since I recorded those interviews, and I'm happy to report that Gray seems extraordinarily pleased with having his bowl on the carpet. And I am pleased to announce that he is no longer pushing his food bowl all around the kitchen. As for the older, educated lady with the big hair, I guess I'll let you know. We'll have links to our guests at ctpublic.org/audacious, where you can listen to other animal-based episodes, like the one we did about how the way we train our dogs says a lot about us. There's also one we did about the power of uncommon emotional support animals, including a pigeon, a sugar glider, and a pig. Oh, and talk about animal communication. We recently spoke with Chris Crow, who was the human partner to an endangered crane for almost 20 years. You can find all of their extraordinary stories at ctpublic.org/audacious or wherever you get your podcasts. Audacious is always so lovingly produced by Jessica Severin DeMartinez, Meg Fitzgerald, Robin Doyon-Aitken, and Meg Dalton at Connecticut Public Radio in Hartford. Stay in touch with me on the socials at Kyone Wolf, and you can always send an email to audacious@ctpublic.org. Thanks for listening and barking. Gray! Whiskey? Good boy.